Welcome to the BNB Investing Podcast for real estate investors. Fix and flippers and realtors exploring investment options with Airbnbs and short-term rentals through acquisition, leasing, or management to generate consistent monthly revenue. Join us for a chat with experienced and successful short-term rental investors to hear their story of how they got started and created wealth by building scalable businesses. We also explore various service providers and lenders that help make our businesses more efficient and maximize revenue in this awesome sharing economy. Welcome your host, Rich Monroe.
Hey everyone, Rich Monroe here with B&B Investing. Thanks for jumping on this week. Just as a reminder, B&B Investing helps investors navigate the short-term rental model. So whether you're doing acquisitions, master leasing, or managing properties, we like to kind of look at all the different technology solutions that are available to us to help us, have a more efficient and scalable business. And so today we've got, it's pronounced two different ways. I know it as Minut, but Nathan just informed me that it's pronounced Minute here in the States. And so, I think I've been using Minut for probably 5 or 6 years now. And so it's going to be tough for me to switch over, but I mean, you tell me. But Nathan, thanks for jumping on today and taking some time. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, appreciate it, Rich. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Been in the short-term rental space with Minute now for a couple of years. Before that, always in the tech space and tech sales space. So for about 18 years. So really like that space. And as far as Minute, for those that aren't familiar with it, the key thing we do is monitor in short-term rentals to help protect properties, right? That's sort of the theme here, but there ends up being some benefits on the side as well, like trying to keep the peace in the community and keep them a bit happier with us as short-term rental managers. And then even keeping our own homeowners, if we're doing rental arbitrage or something like that, happy as well. So we'll definitely chat throughout the call here about some of the features and whatnot, but that's who we are. We're founded in Sweden. So we have an office there, and then our CEO and some folks are located in London as well. So we have an office there, and then the rest of us are all remote. So working from home like myself.
All right, very cool. Those of you guys jumping on, please throw a quick yes in the comments if you can hear us both okay. Feel free to throw out any questions in the comments as well, and we'll definitely try to hit those. And so, like I mentioned, I've been using Minut for many years, and love the product. You mentioned rental arbitrage, and so we, over the years, we've had a lot of units that are in multifamily buildings, and we've done, hybrids. So it might be a 20-unit building, and I'm running short-term rentals out of 8 of them. And so to kind of commingle the long-term with the short-term, using this device to monitor the noise and kind of be very proactive is definitely, huge. And how long have you guys been doing this?
For sure. Yeah, we've been in the business since 2014. And you mentioned noise. That was really what got us into the game to begin with. So that was sort of day one, the key feature that we created that people were coming to us for. We still do that today, and it is still one of our most sought after features and primary reasons that people come to us for exactly what you just said. If you're running a short-term rental property, especially in a multi-tenant building, then it's really nice to know if there are complaints about noise, are they warranted or are they founded? Or even before there are complaints, you might get a notification about noise inside your rental. So yeah, we've been doing that particularly since 2014 now.
Okay, and I know I'm kind of excited to hear about the recent update. A lot of us struggle with folks, not only with the potentially noise and interfering with the neighbors and throwing parties and events, but also smoking in the unit and smoking cigarettes and a lot of times weed that can definitely disrupt your whole operation and cause you to get cancellations on the next guest checking in. And historically, it's been very difficult to collect no smoking fines and, being able to get reimbursed through the Airbnb Resolution Center and things like that. So would love to hear a little bit about that new technology and kind of, what that looks like.
Yeah, definitely. So before I get too carried away, I should probably show the device for those that haven't seen it. I'll try to angle it away from my light a little bit, but that's what it looks like. And there's a magnetic plate on the back here. So if I remove that for you all, you'll see that has a 3M adhesive on the back side. So it's just peel and stick. So for most people, they'll peel that and stick it either on a ceiling or maybe toward the top of a wall, similar to the location that you would put a smoke detector. And then the device magnetizes to it. It has a built-in battery that's rechargeable. So most people will use it fully unplugged, although you can leave it plugged in. It's USB-C if you do that. And then the only other thing I'll point out before I share my screen and we can kind of look at how the features work would be the little circle that you see there on the front, which is a motion detector. So that's really the only other thing that maybe you want to keep in mind where that's pointed and when you're installing it. But yeah, I can actually share my screen and we can take a look at how things work and maybe what the features are. Actually, before I even dig too deeply into what they look like in practice there, I'll just show this screen on a slide so that we can get a quick view of what the device is capable of. So as you can see here, noise monitoring, we'll talk about that a decent bit. Cigarette detection, you already touched on. We'll definitely talk about that. Some of the others we won't probably have time to talk about too much. So I just want to make sure everyone's aware that they're there. So that would be tamper detection. So that magnetic plate, as soon as someone removes the device from that, you'll know. Crowd detection, which is like a Bluetooth-based monitor, so you can see how many devices are inside the unit. So it helps, over occupancy and that sort of thing, or just early detection of a party. We monitor temperature and humidity and can send you alerts about highs and lows there. We now have an outdoor mode, which is something new to the platform. For anybody who's used us in the past, you were only able to use this indoors. Now you can use it outdoors as well. The motion detection that I mentioned, so that can be used like for security in a property that's going to be unoccupied for a bit. We take temperature and humidity and analyze for mold risk, so you'll have that. And then it can also listen out for specific sounds like a fire alarm going off or a carbon monoxide alarm or something like that. And in practice, that looks like this.
So Nathan, if we could just go back for a second and spend a little bit of time on those additional features.
Sure.
So obviously the crowd detection is actually a pretty cool feature. And so how does that work exactly? Do folks have to actually be on the Wi-Fi network to be detected, or what is that detection technology doing?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, because there are a couple of tools out there that can do something like this. And one option is to do what you just mentioned. With ours, you don't actually have to be connected to the Wi-Fi. So the goal here isn't to try to capture their data and for you to be able to market to them like some of those occupancy type monitors are doing. The goal here is more so to let you know when there's a crowd. So for that reason, we're going to let you know right away when a new device is there, regardless of whether they've connected to Wi-Fi or not. So it's just a device count. You'll see it in the back end here in just a bit. And so the number there doesn't always indicate an exact count of people, because I may come with a phone and a laptop, right? And so all of a sudden my device count is 2. But the goal isn't to count every single individual person, but rather to let you know when all of a sudden there's an elevated risk that there is an over occupancy issue or a crowd forming for a party. And so you would get alerted about that even before maybe the noise level gets too high or cigarette smoke happens or something, right? So sometimes that's the best early indicator. So for that reason, they don't have to be connected to Wi-Fi. And in most cases, they don't even have to have their Bluetooth on, because with like modern day iPhone and Androids for the last 3 or 4 generations, those features that allow you to get a prompt that says, hey, do you want to connect to your AirPods that are nearby? That sort of feature means that there's a latent Bluetooth signal even when Bluetooth is off. So we can typically count it pretty much all the time.
I think that's very cool, because it definitely gives you an early detection of something that's not going right. If you know that the place sleeps 6 people and all of a sudden there's 40 devices in there, it definitely will raise a flag. I think that the tamper one detection is great as well. I think this is a good spot to point out, those of you that aren't listing yet or don't have your short-term rental up and running, part of the requirement to have one of these in your property is to have a disclosure on your listing description that says you actually do use noise detection devices. And so even before somebody books with your property, you're fully disclosing the fact that you have noise detection devices. Now, just to be clear, it doesn't record. It's just measuring the level of sound. But that tamper detection is great, because if somebody is trying to do something they shouldn't be, that's immediately going to alert you the second they try to pull that off the wall. And so like Nathan was mentioning, as you can tell, it looks very much like a smoke detector. And so you can typically put it in an inconspicuous area, usually on the ceiling or on the side of the wall, where it kind of blends in anyway. But anytime somebody is trying to do something, then, they're going to try to, that's when you'll get that detection. So I think that's a great feature as well, to kind of raise that alarm. And then just to mention the motion detection device, I've used that many, many times. It's definitely a convenient addition to having a security system, where you may not need to require to get a security system. It's motion detected, like Nathan mentioned. And so it basically alerts you, and it actually will sound an alarm if you have it set, during the time that property is empty, or if you're setting up the property in the beginning. And so that's a great additional feature that we use all the time as well. Let's see, the mold risk is also great, and the temperature and humidity. If you don't have a smart thermostat in your property, this is also a good way to monitor those items. So I just wanted to point that out, Nathan. You can
I appreciate that. Yeah, so in practice, this is what it looks like. So this is actually looking at a property that's connected to the device I showed you at the beginning. So it's live data. So you can see what the noise monitoring looks like. We can start there, actually. So the decibel level is what's indicated here, that this little graph at the bottom. So you can see when I'm not in a meeting and, just working at my computer, even then the ambient noise is around 38 to 40 decibels usually. Just to give you all an idea of what's a good decibel level. And then the conversation we're having now has gotten us up into the 50s. So 50 to 60, even up to 70 for a conversation between two people is possible. So for that reason, you'll want to set your threshold, which is this dotted line, to something reasonable enough that you're not going to get alerted too often, right? But you do want to make sure it's at a level where if they're talking or playing music at a loud enough level that it's going to bother the neighbors, that you are alerted. And so that's exactly what happens when it goes over this limit.
Very cool. And you said you've got that running live in the room right now?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. How powerful are your speakers if I put on some music?
Well, you're in my ears right now, so I wouldn't hear it.
That will work. I was gonna show the folks how it goes up, but obviously we all get the point. Right? So.
Yeah. But my ears might appreciate it. I don't know, depending on the music that you play.
Right.
But no, it does a good job. The way it'll work is as soon as it starts hearing noise over the limit, it starts listening even more intently. So the updates get even more frequent. So as soon as there's a spike in that sound, it listens even more intently. And it's going to take the average. So if someone's listening to music really loudly and there's a 3-second pause and then it gets loud again, you're fine. It's going to take the average over the, several minutes there. But yeah, so it's pretty simple and straightforward. You can set a different level in the evening than you would in the daytime, as far as the threshold there, since most people want to get alerted a bit quicker in the evening. And that's when your neighbors are going to complain the quickest. Yeah,
that's typically what we do. And, on all of our listings, we have a quiet time from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. That we have our guests agree to before they check in. And we set the decibel levels probably very similar to where you have them, but a little bit lower during that 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. time frame. So I don't really necessarily want to wait it to be blasting blaring music or a bunch of people talking loud. I'll get a notification if there's just something going on, if it's 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning, and it gives me the ability to kind of tap the guest on the shoulder and say, hey, just wanted to check in, make sure everything was okay. We heard a loud noise. And what that does is it allows you to potentially prevent them from getting too crazy when they know that you're kind of listening, seeing that you're getting some noise indications. And so I think that's a good way to be proactive instead of waiting for it to get out of hand, right? So
exactly.
Isn't there also an option, Nathan, that communicates directly with the guest as well automatically?
That's exactly what I was just going to say. Yes. Okay. So depending on the property management system that you use, I'll click here and you can take a look at the ones that we have integrations with, but you can integrate with a property management system. And sorry, let me refresh this. And then if you have one of the ones that we already integrate with, we would pull in your guest data. So like the date of their check-in and check-out, and then their phone number. And then if there is a noise event, you can say what happens at this point, right? So do I send them a text? Do I give them an auto call, which is like an AI voiced call? Do I add flash and sound on the actual device itself? And so I can show you in just a moment, maybe sort of the strategy to use that with, but basically choose whichever property management system you're using. And then you would just click connect here at the top right, connect to them. And then you'll just say 123 Main Street here in Guesty is equal to 123 Main Street in Minute. And then that's it. It's always going to import then the guest information for those auto calls and texts. And
Very cool.
I can show you here what that looks like. So here's sort of an example since mine's below the limit at the moment. So a couple things to point out. You can see there's a short spike over here where it goes over the limit, but comes right back down. We're not going to send you alerts every time someone sneezes or something. So nothing happened there. But when it went over and stayed over, and you choose how quickly that happens. For me, I have it set to 5 minutes. You may want it to be set to 10 minutes. If you're in a single family home, that's probably going to be a better bet. If you're in a multifamily, 5 minutes might be the right call. But basically, whatever you've set, that first alert goes out. You'll get an alert, of course, but then most people would send a text right away. So that would be automated. You wouldn't even have to reach out to the guest right away necessarily. And in about 94% of cases, if you set this up in this way, you won't even have to reach out because there won't be a second alert. They'll quiet down. Mm-hmm. That's the percentage right now that we have, is about 94% of the time that first text does the trick.
Yeah, the other great thing that this does, obviously, in addition to the noise, if you've got a guest, which we have occasionally happen, they're in the kitchen, they don't know what they're doing, and they set off the regular smoke alarm, and that obviously makes a loud enough noise to where we get a notification on this device. Again, you're not waiting till they check out to see, oh my goodness, they had a grease fire, right? So it immediately alarms you, so that again you can check in with them just to see what's going on, and then you'll know immediately if there's something of concern, if there's a small fire or whatever. And be able to, react to it right away instead of waiting till days later to find out about it. So that's another cool feature about having it in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, there's a setting specifically for things like a fire alarm or carbon monoxide alarm that you can turn on if you want to be notified when it hears that sound specifically. So if something like that happens, you'd also get a notification about that fire alarm going off if you want. So it sort of makes a fire alarm that's not smart into a smart fire alarm in some ways.
Cool.
But yeah, back over to the actual dashboard. We talked a little bit about crowd detect earlier, and that's the next section that you see here. So similar to the noise, now we're looking at number of Bluetooth devices. So instead of decibel, we've got a 5 here. That's how many Bluetooth devices are in range. And then similarly to above, we've got a dotted line for a threshold for devices. Mine's at 15. So if we were to go above 15, I would get a notification that there's a risk for a crowd in the property. So again, something you can set yourself, but we would basically let you know as soon as there was any sort of elevated risk, and you could take a look. So pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Then the next is the cigarette detection. So that's the other key. That's probably the second most popular feature, if not becoming the most popular feature at the moment. It's our newest major feature. And it's pretty simple in terms of, as you can see here, all you have to do is turn it on. And there's not a lot to see right now. But in the background, it's probably one of our most intelligent features because it does use machine learning. It calibrates to the unit once it's turned on. And then once it's calibrated, it just sits there and watches out for air quality changes. And then when one occurs, it's smart enough to use that machine learning model that's applied to it to see what was the cause of this change. If this is cooking smoke or burnt toast or something like that, we don't need to send an alert. But if we detect that it's cigarette smoke, then we will. And so it's quite a bit happening there in the background. But like you said, it could be so hard to prove without something
Right.
like this. You're just having to take a picture of cigarette butts if they've left some, or
Hmm.
say that the cleaners smelled a bad smell, and that's literally impossible to prove, obviously.
Right. Right.
So now you're going to have a date and time stamped alert that says there was smoking in this property on Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. And so immediately you get to send that alert to Airbnb or Verbo or whoever it is that you're having to file this claim through, and say, here you go, here's your proof.
Have you gotten confirmation from the platforms that that's evidence to prove that they had someone smoking in the unit?
Yeah, so far our users have just raved about the success of this. If they're having to prove it, literally they
Hmm.
just send that over. They may have also still the pictures of the cigarette butts or something like that, which is
Right.
great. But you
Well,
send
and
that along with date
unfortunately,
and time
yeah,
stamped alert.
yeah, unfortunately, a lot of times too, we have the evidence on the message thread of the next guest checking in and complaining about the smell, and so that's
Yeah.
usually kind of a slam dunk that this is undisputable.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So it's smart enough to detect the difference between someone that's cooking something from smoke to actual cigarette smoke.
Yeah. So our engineering team literally built a robot that sits and smokes all day and feeds that data into the machine learning model. And so they've trained it on tobacco and cigarettes. They're in Sweden, so marijuana is illegal there. So they literally have like a THC free version of marijuana that they've been able to procure there and use for this type of testing. And so yeah, it just builds a model that gets smarter and smarter and smarter over time. And then actually even is able to learn from events that happen in the field as well. So if you have a cigarette event in one of your properties that it detects successfully, and you mark it as, yes, this was correct, everything was detected well, it's going to take that information into account as well and make the model even smarter.
And so, does it differentiate between the two, or is it you just have it in one category? So if it goes off, it's going to either be cigarette or it could potentially be weed.
Yeah, so it's all lumped into this same category now.
Yeah. Hmm.
Tobacco's got a head start on how incredibly intelligent it is comparative to any other model, but it is lumped together. Part of that is by design, because there are certain localities where if we were to tell you we detected marijuana smoke, you would then be legally obligated to report it to the authorities. Not in all
Yeah.
cities, but in some
Right.
locations that's true. So
Hmm.
rather than figure out how we get around that, it's easiest just to lump it together. You're going to file a claim either way, whether it was tobacco or something else. So you're just going to have an alert that shows that there was smoke of this nature.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a pretty intelligent feature. People seem to love it, so we're very proud of it, and
Can you
excited
scroll
to
down
see
a
if
little
any of
bit?
you are trying it.
Yeah,
Yeah, of
can we
course.
scroll down a little bit and see the rest of the? Yeah, so you've got
Yeah,
the temperature and the mold
yeah.
detect and
So
everything.
what you're seeing here, the security alarm,
Yep.
I've got mine turned off, but we'll see how there's actually some things still happening in the background related to motion that can be handy even when it's turned off. Like you said, you described it perfectly. You turn it on, you can choose whether it's a silent alarm that just sends you an alert, or if it actually makes sound inside the unit in the property. So you choose, but even when it's off, it is actually still collecting motion data. It's just not sending you alerts about it. So we'll take a look at that in a sec. And then I've actually got two devices installed within the same property. One of them is our older generation, and then one is the newer generation, hence the different photo here icon. But so you can see what that would look like. Most people do just have one in their property, but for certain properties, if you have a large enough space and maybe you have a den or a family room or something that you're also concerned with, you may have two. This is what it would look like. And you can see the difference in decibel level and then temperature and humidity here. And you can set a high and low threshold for either temperature or humidity or both if you want to get alerts about that as well.
Okay. Is there any difference in the outdoor model as far as functionality or detection?
Yeah, so really good question. You would have the same device, the same one I showed you before. So if let's say you bought 10 of them and you were going to put 5 outside and 5 inside, The device is going to be identical. When you install it, it's going to ask if you're putting it indoors or outdoors. If you choose outdoors, that's what actually causes the change. So all of them are weatherproof, which is handy in case you need to kind of move them around at some point. But when you do put it in outdoor mode, it's going to kick on an audio ID feature. So that helps to strip away things like wind noise or environmental noise that could have caused a false positive for a noise event otherwise. And then it's going to turn a couple of things off that you don't care about outdoors versus indoors, and just to conserve battery. But apart from that, everything's pretty well the same.
Okay, yeah, we use it quite a bit for our properties that have swimming pools or outdoor areas that are nearby to the neighbor, like fire pit areas or hot tub areas, and so it works well to kind of monitor that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
I'll click into one of these and we'll take a look at what I was alluding to earlier. So everything we just looked at was what's happening now. But this screen is actually looking at one of the sensors and looking at more historical data over time. So the time frame is 24 hours by default, but you can choose here in the date range picker any range of time that you want. So if you had a difficult guess that was causing problems, you can pull that specific data. So like looking at noise, for instance, you can see it's a lot more detailed. I can see the daytime and nighttime threshold change here over the course of a few days. I've got like highs, lows, averages. So it's quite a bit more information here, all of which can then be exported if I need to. Like if there was a party issue, I can export this sound data and send it directly to, the OTA that I'm dealing with, like Airbnb or Vrbo or whomever. And then motion, this is sort of where that comes into play as well. So I mentioned that it's collecting motion data even when the security alarm is turned off. So if you have a cigarette alert, let's say at 3:30, and then the guest tries to claim, well, we weren't even there at 3:30, you'll have the evidence to say, well, actually, I can see that you arrived at, the first motion event was at 6:15 or whatever. So it can come in really handy to just have that data in the background. And that's data that won't go away. As long as you have an account with us, it's there. So if you ever need to refer back to it, you can.
Makes sense. So the magical elephant in the room question, how much does all this, great technology cost us?
Yeah, very good question. So it's really going to come down to whether you want to integrate it with a property management system or with Airbnb, because we do have a direct integration with them as well, for those of you who aren't yet using a property management system. So that's really the magical question. And depending on your answer, you're either going to use standard or pro. Those are our two options. And I can pull it up to look at it, or we can just talk about it. But basically, you're looking at the equivalent of $10 a month for standard per property or $15 a month for pro. It is billed annually, so I like to make sure people see that. So standard, in other words, would be $120 a year per rental, and then pro would be $180. And then the other key thing to make sure you spot is that pro comes with a free device for every single rental, and then standard comes with a half price device. That's $50 one time. So in year one, the costs are really similar. So you're looking at 120 plus 50, right? So that's 170. And then over here, you're looking at 180 plus 0. So it's 180. So if you do have a property management system or you use Airbnb primarily, I would say try out Pro in year one and test out that integration piece to see if it's a good fit. But then at any point before your second year, you could always switch to standard if you feel like the savings would be beneficial, because then the price would drop down to 120.
All right,
and
cool. I just put the discount link in the chat, guys. So if you're interested to get the $50 discount, there's a code you can use it. I just put the link in the chat.
Yeah, thank you for that. And then for any of you that have been in this game for a while and have more properties, more than 20, as you can see here, there are some other discounts that could apply. So do feel free to reach out to me. My email, I can actually just put it up here so that people see it, but it's also just my name with 2 dots. So just nathan.smith@minut.com. So if you do have a larger number of properties and want to talk pricing, feel free to reach out. But then that discount that's in the chat now should be pretty helpful for everyone.
Yeah, I'll put your email address in the chat as well. And so guys, I mean, for that monthly expense, that's definitely even cheaper than if you were to get a security system. This is kind of a no-brainer in terms of running your operation and being able to, have that type of monitoring device to make sure that you're vetting further what your activity is in your property. And so definitely highly recommend it. Like I mentioned, I've been using these devices for many, many years. And so I was going to ask you, so I noticed that you did have one of the older version ones on the app. So the older technology will still work. And when you get the new technology, kind of the major differences are some of the enhancements we talked about with the smoking and some of the other features that aren't necessarily. I know the old units still have the crowd detection as well, though, right?
Yeah, really the only one we talked about that it wouldn't have would be the cigarette detection. So if anyone has one of the older ones, it's still going to work fine. In fact, for people that do already have them that want the cigarette detection, I usually recommend just pay the added cost to just buy one extra device and put two of them in the same property, and then you're sort of double covered now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the old one works really well as well. I've got one that's not connected to anything, but it's sitting here. That's what it looks like.
Yeah. Now, I will mention, guys, the one thing that you need to be aware of, like Nathan mentioned earlier when we first got started, these are rechargeable. So you do have to make sure that periodically someone on your team or your cleaners know to pull it off the wall at least once a month, I would say, to charge it for a couple hours and then put it back on there. It does have on the monitoring, obviously, it does let you know how high or low the battery is, so you'll know kind of how it's looking. I think you also get notifications too if it gets too low. So keep up. You just have to kind of keep up with that to charge them to make sure that they're fully charged.
Yep. So with the newest one, my average customer will probably get 6 to 8 months of battery life. So like you said, like a typical, whether it's monthly or quarterly or something, a little charge here and there goes a really long way. And then you actually end up getting 2 notifications. The first is 25% battery remaining. So you've probably got around 3 months of battery life left at that point. So it's not necessarily a big red flag that you have to go right away and charge it, but it lets you know that it's coming soon. And then the next alert would be 10% battery. And that's probably less than 30 days remaining. So that is more your alert to say, okay, if we haven't already charged this up, we need to get out there and get it charged. And then we do have a new feature that's probably new since the last time we talked, Rich, which is sensor swap. So with these new ones, you can now have one. If you have enough properties to warrant this, you could have an extra one somewhere in your office and then keep it charged up decently. When you get that alert that one's running low, you can charge this one so that you don't have to have that one plugged in for a couple hours in a unit somewhere. And then you can actually go to the unit and pull the old one down, hold the other one near it, and it automates a copy and paste type process where it puts all the settings on the new one and then just put the new one in place and walk out. So in a matter of about 15 seconds, you're done.
Oh, that's huge. That's definitely huge. So help me understand that if I'm buying so do I only get that advantage if I'm buying more than a certain amount, or how does that work?
No, we just need to turn it on for you if you're interested in using it. And you'd really only need one extra sensor floating around somewhere that you could keep in an office and keep it fairly topped up with battery.
Does it have to be an old one? I mean, does it have to be the newer version to do it?
It would need to be the newer version. Yep.
Okay. So, but let's say I have, 20 units that I have detection devices in. Would I have to buy 20 more to have that capability? I want to clearly understand what you're saying.
Yeah, any extra one will work. So basically, if I just have one extra unit, then I go to that property where one is now dead. I turn on the new unit first, take the old one off of its magnetic plate, hold it near to itself, and then now this old one that's dead, I take it back to the office and charge it, and it's ready and waiting for the next time.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. That makes total sense, because that is one of the things we would struggle with is cleaners have enough to take on their plate to add this on there. It's been a little bit of a hectic situation, so that makes perfect sense. And you just constantly keep that extra one charged to be able to swap out as needed throughout. And you are right; they don't go low on the batteries quickly. It's sometimes 5 or 6 months to where that happens, and so that's a great feature. I'll definitely try to implement that in our operation for sure. All right, guys, we're about to shut down here. If you have any questions whatsoever for Nathan, I really appreciate you taking the time today. This has been very informative. A lot of us do have, the smoking is an issue. So, when I heard the news that you guys were coming out with that edition, I definitely have to get you on here to kind of learn all about it. And so I appreciate you taking the time. So is there anything in the future, your technology team and back in the, with all the experts, are they working on some new additions that you can tell us about, or is it too soon yet?
Oh man, they are always working on something new. They built this new piece of hardware last year with all of these capabilities that they want to unlock. So it's definitely something where we'll be adding features as the next couple of years go on in this particular device. Let's see, as far as ones that I can already talk about, I don't know if there's anything that I'm really at liberty to say just yet, but yeah, I'll say our engineering team is the biggest team at the company. So it's by far still our biggest goal is to continue to unlock new features and make them better. So they're always working on things like dog bark detection and like little things like that just might help somebody who has a pet-free home, or maybe they allow pets, but people lie and say they're not bringing one so they don't have to pay the fee, and like tiny little things like that. Always they're doing really cool stuff to try to build out new features to the product.
Love it. Awesome. All right. Well, listen, thanks again, Nathan. I really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for jumping on. Just as a reminder, B&B Investing does help new investors. If you want to learn how to scale your business and you're ready to take action, feel free to reach out to me directly. We can schedule a quick call to check in with you. But until then, we'll see everybody next week. Thanks again, Nathan. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Rich.
All right. Take care.
See ya.
Thanks for jumping on the BNB Investing podcast this week. Please click on the subscribe and like button below. For more trainings, property tours, and content, you can join my BNB Investing Facebook group by clicking below. If you are ready to grow your short-term rental portfolio and maximize your monthly income, you can click on the link below to schedule a quick strategy call with Rich or someone from his team to see how we can help or point you in the right direction. Stay tuned for our next episode and hope to see you on the BNB Investing Group podcast.